I would be insincere if I said this video that I'm about to embark on wasn't one of the more exciting ones I have done here on this medium. It is the exciting maiden voyage of Mauricio Pochettino. It's here, Saturday, against Panama in Austin. And I couldn't tell you how I was tickled pink when I saw Mauricio Pochettino on our shores in Austin, Texas, watching an MLS Next Pro game, Austin 2, probably with a frosty cold Lone Star by his leg there, seeing players that are nowhere near the national team level, but this is the thing that these managers do. They watch football ad nauseum, game after game, and maybe they get a twinkle in their eye and say, I want to get another look at this guy. Every day, Mauricio Pochettino is here, feet on the ground in the United States, is a good day. And we will enjoy this stretch as they play Panama under the lights in Austin, Texas. Beautiful venue there. And then they shift over to Mexico on Tuesday in Guadalajara to take on El Tri. The first major window for Mauricio Pochettino as he sets sails to reconstruct, to reimagine this U.S. men's national team. And we will discuss all of it here on the Soccer OG. Check out the Soccer OG podcast where all podcasts are available. Full library there for your listening pleasure. Like and subscribe us here as we get ready for a very exciting stretch. We'll be here for both games. Preview, review, talking points. I wanted to wait a few days to let everyone else discuss it so I could pick off the interesting things that I found about this fascinating stretch where we hope we take this big leap. I hope casual observers and the news cycle when, in a very busy sports time in the United States, pay attention to this. It obviously has been pretty dire since the Copa America. That last window too was rough. And I will say this, we could lose these two games and there shouldn't be criticism because this is the beginning of this journey for Mauricio Pochettino. And I love the fact that he is not being accelerated. He is not taking liberties. He's not taking any shortcuts. He said, I haven't spoken to any of these players. I had a chance meeting with Anthony Robinson, but I am going to give them the benefit of the doubt, meet them. We saw video coming out where he was with Tim Ream, shaking hands, embracing, and having these entrance interviews, conversations, so that he can bring that all in and kind of start from here and build out. Not bringing in any perceptions prior, which is probably impossible to do. You've got to come in with some base there, but I think he's telling us the right things, and I believe he's going to let his actions with his own eyes influence how he builds this roster. So I waited to see what everyone was saying, see what were the big talking points in this mega transition, officially from Greg Berhalter to Mauricio Pochettino. I would imagine, nobody wants to miss this camp. We are all on the clock. There's like 10 windows before the World Cup, which sounds like a lot, but it really isn't. Players, and there's been some major injuries. Flo Balogun at the top of that list, who has been playing, finally turning the corner with Monaco. A real disappointing that he's not here. I still think he is the guy, but we'll get into that striker situation, which is one of the things to really look for among many, many things. Gio Reyna, long-term out. Tim Weah is out, a guy that you would think would be in that inner circle. We don't know what that inner circle looks like. I initially said it was 2 players that are locks. It's probably 4 or 5. Johnny Cardoso misses out. Tyler Adams long-term as well. Tanner Tessman comes in. Brandon Vasquez, Alejandro Zendejas, which is an exciting addition because it shows that Liga MX players, Vasquez and Zendejas and Cade Cowell, who got called in before in the last camp, are all in play here. The 4 MLS players, MLS is in play. I believe Mauricio Pochettino will be looking at guys that he feels can accentuate this team in addition to our European base. We have 50, let's call it 50 players under consideration, and we're getting a first look. But again, no one wants to miss this. And I imagine there's some paranoia with those guys having some FOMO of not being here to see what is going on. So you can also sense it in the way the players have played with their clubs. that there is a big change. And they are curious to where they stand. When there's a new boss in town, even if you are the best employee, your role might change because this person may have a different view from the last person who empowered you. I've dealt with that in my professional career many times. When sometimes I was at the top dog and sometimes at the middle dog, and I benefited from new leadership. So this is Mauricio Pochettino clearly looking to create competition. This is what new coaches do. You're not going to shortchange yourself and say, all right, let's just have this group. I kind of liked it. And there's no shortcuts here. And I think Mauricio Pochettino's done a nice job by saying we're starting essentially from scratch, not from scratch, but with his new coaching staff coming in here. And, well, here we are. So the injuries were a bit frustrating, I'm sure, for everyone, but it's a good practice because we're going to have injuries, especially this program. And it could be injuries to key players, going back to the day with Christian Pulisic, who has resolved his, but now Gio Reyna and Tyler Adams, and now Flo Balogun. It's just unexpected. So we now start to ask some questions about how this starts to look like. And again, I wanted to see what the talking points. The first one is Mauricio Pochettino coming in and the intense trainings. He wants to maintain a high standard. And we've heard from the players, Tim Ream, it's intense. We had a pretty long session. Jedi Robinson, first day we're used to coming back from the European clubs. We've had demanding, and remember, we've talked about the schedules. They're as demanding as they've ever been, and players are breaking down. Jedi Robinson, we have time for recovering, but under this new leadership, it was straight into training with a tough session. And I like it. I like tough sessions. I want the wake-up call. And it's good for now to kind of establish, the leadership. I don't think he's not a taskmaster, but he wants to see his players absorb the style that they're going to play and absorb what it takes physically, aerobically, to play under a Mauricio Pochettino style, which we've seen at the club game. Now, as that moves forward, I've had the luxury of seeing national teams train. And from what I've heard from many reporters, when the national teams come together, it is usually not that demanding. Because I know initially people will say, well, what did Greg Berhalter do? Was it a vacation? No, it wasn't a vacation. Greg Berhalter had a difficult job of bringing this young squad together and pulling together. That was the plan. And then when they got to the Copa, it didn't quite hit. They weren't quite ready. And maybe they need to work a little harder. But when you're dealing with the big stars of the world, and they're coming from their club, and I'm talking about Argentina or Portugal or France, and they come to the national team and they're used to a certain standard, they're not going to want to run all day at training. They feel like they've done it. And by the way, you should have done it before this because you don't have these players for a long time. So intense trainings are good, but it can, not now, but as we get closer, it could backfire, especially with some of these star players. As Jedi Robinson said, I come back, I've been working my tail off, and I'm like, I got to do these sprints and pull these bands and jump through these hoops, whatever it is. It can get a little bit old. But right now, that's just something to keep into consideration because most national team trainings are not that intensive. This is how Mauricio Pochettino does it. I believe our program needs it. And at this stage, it's important to show the players that this is what's required to make his team. So good. Beginning of camp. He's met everyone. He's shown training what it's all about. Good stuff. This is the first impression. And this is why everyone wants to be part of it. We are off and running. Though I will make one exception about the training camps being demanding. And that's Marcelo Bielsa, who is, the mentor of Mauricio Pochettino. And we've heard Luis Suarez and others talking about the training sessions for Marcelo Bielsa and how it rubbed them the wrong way. And you can see that, Uruguay's doing great, but maybe there could be an imbalance because of the means of that coach. And that's a direct connection to Mauricio Pochettino. Again, horses for courses. This is the right approach for this team. who did get lackadaisical, who did take their eye off and maybe didn't put the required work. And yeah, Greg Berhalter was probably too nice and let him get away with stuff which he shouldn't. That's not going to fly anymore. By the way, if the U.S., this may take the U.S. back to that old hard-working, we're not going to be beaten fitness-wise by anyone else, which is kind of our identity. I would like us to be more of the technical team, and if we could still maintain some of that hard-working USA spirit, I'm all for it, because I think it's something that we do better than most countries historically. So we get into some of the player decisions, and I want to start with the strikers. There's so many questions with goalkeepers, so whoever gets that first nod, if it's Patrick Schulte again, I think that could be pretty telling. Center back position, I don't think we're going to... Oh, we forgot to mention Serginho Dest, who's also a long-term injury. We're not going to get closer to seeing who the two center backs there are there. I would imagine Chris Richards is another one who's not there. So opportunity, Tim Ream, who I said I don't think will make World Cup 2026, but maybe there's a chance because Pochettino wants leaders. And there's a lot of footage of Tim Ream getting a lot of face time with Pochettino. So that defense needs a leadership. There's no one else there other than Tim Ream who can do it. Even with Chris Richards there, I don't think he is the guy that is going to be the rah-rah, what have you, which again is something we need, and I think Pochettino knows it too. You scan through this team, and there isn't any. There's Pulisic, who sometimes, we had this whole thing about not taking penalties. You would like him if other players, according to his coach, taking penalties when he was the assigned penalty taker. You would like to hear stories of Christian Pulisic grabbing that ball and saying, get out of here, I'm taking penalties. I still believe Christian's a good leader, and we're going to see that hard work that he's put into Milan. You got Tim Ream, and then we don't have Tyler Adams. Who is it? It's not Weston, I don't think. I don't think he wants to be that guy. We need those guys somewhere along the paddock. The forward situation is something that we could see some progress here. So that's where I'm going to keep my keen eye on in these games, because no Flo Balogun. Josh Sargent, who has played, one appearance since the 2022 World Cup. He was a bit player at that World Cup. He has scored, 17 goals at Norwich. People are calling him the best forward in the EFL Championship, which is just music to my ears and your ears as well. You have Haji Wright. Do they play the two forwards? The winger situation, we've talked about the different formations, this 4-2-3-1 or this 4-3-3. We got to settle on that before we settle on the players, I believe. At least a model that will get us going, and then maybe we can transition during games. So the winger situation is dire without Tim Weah. We don't have deadline speed. Christian Pulisic, want to play him at a 10. I don't know if you can do that here. Maybe if you do the 4-2-3-1. I tend to think, you find Pulisic as whether on the right side winger. We've seen him with Milan, or on the left side. We've seen him with the national team in recent games. I would love to see a guy who can take the bull by the horns, that can go. A Cade Cowell type. So maybe there's an opportunity there. But right now we're talking about the number 9. So no Flo Balogun. You have Sargent, Ricardo Pepi, Haji Wright, Brandon Vasquez. Sargent should get that opportunity. Sargent is the best guy amongst those players. We can't rely on Josh Sargent. I'm sorry. The injuries, he's still carrying, was it an ankle injury? And he could do great here. But if we start talking who's the number 9, I would diffuse that right away. The number 9 is still Flo Balogun. He played well in the Copa America. He's playing now for his club. He is athletically another level. He is our number 9. And all the work we've put in with him, we don't jettison there unless he goes south in a hurry, which he has not. He's actually been trending in the right direction before this injury. I want to rely on Josh Sargent. This is the beginning for him. But I've seen people already say that he should be the number 9. No chance. We can't rely on him. His injury history is awful. So I'm pulling for him. I'd love to see him start, and I'd love to see him score, but by no means does that put him up the pecking order. I could be wrong. I just don't think Mauricio Pochettino is going to look at that, because you see the injury prone, and he's still carrying an injury. you can't really move forward. So I don't think Balogun should have anything to worry about. With regards to the winger depth, who could it be? Brendan Aronson could get a sniff. He says he likes to tuck under as well. Malik Tillman could be a 10, but he might have to be put out as a wide player. I mentioned Cal, Kevin Paredes type, a real flyer, someone that we could see benefit from this style of play because we don't have that. And it all falls off between the forwards because we have those. And you want to accentuate what you have, and you play with two of them if it's Balogun and Sargent or Balogun and Wright or Vasquez and Balogun. But the situation with that may leave us with a team that just doesn't have that wide wrinkle that we probably need. So that is certainly something to keep an eye on. So keep an eye on everything. This is exciting. Mauricio Pochettino's here. I love how he's starting. We'll keep an eye on the intensity of the trainings because, again, that will possibly get stale for these players. This is going to be a big wake-up call for the players to see how they handle all of this. I think they'll handle it well. They are clearly walking on eggshells a little bit. There's FOMO for those players that aren't here. And now we get going because Pochettino has such an aura that it does a lot of the work for him. The Soccer OG. Check out the Soccer OG podcast where all podcasts are available. Like and subscribe us here. We'll be back to talk about the Panama game. Get you ready for El Tri against Mexico coming up next week. What an exciting time. Enjoy it.